you must have experienced a growth in confidence from the win in the Commonwealth Games and the excitement ahead of 2020 in the Tokyo Olympic Games. Life's not fair. October 2019, you ruptured your ACL. We can smile about it now, maybe. But major injury. Take us back to that period and just walk us through it.
So, funnily enough, 5 minutes before I did mine, a player from our team ruptured their ACL as well in the same game. So the first, when it happened, so for Dave, he's a fair bit older. He's now unfortunately retired from the game due to it because it was his second time it's happened on that knee. So I've dislocated a shoulder before. I know what the feeling was. So my knee basically just popped out and popped back in, and I was like, yeah, I've done something here. And I didn't really think too much of it at the time because I could still walk on it. So I was like, questionable walking, but I could put pressure through it. So I basically hobbled to the sideline, sat down with the physio, and I was like, this doesn't feel great. And he was like, yeah, we'll strap it up and we'll see how it is in terms of just like, you're not going to play anymore. Let's see how it is in a few days. 2 days later, I'm still in the same play. I'm like, Sam, this isn't great, mate. He's like, yeah, we'll send you back, basically, when the boys, obviously, everybody goes back. So I got back, and the doctor, I basically went for the scan, sat in the meeting with the doctor, and she was like, so you know what it is, don't you? And I was like, no. Thinking, so far, everyone's just told me it's just a bit of bone bruising, it'll be all right. She was like, you ruptured your ACL. I was like, sorry, what? She was like, anterior cruciate ligament. I was like, no, I understood what that was. What about the ruptured bit? She's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So I just got up, walked out, walked to the sink, tried to throw up. That was my way of just digesting it at that stage because I was like, just shock. Walked back in, sat down. I was like, okay, so what's the plan? She was like, well, it's a pretty tight timeline. I was like, all right, have I got a chance? Yeah, right, okay. Okay. I went into the physio, so I know where we are at Bisham, where the GB stuff training happens. You basically have doctors and physio bit is all quite closely linked. So I just walked into the physio room and just broke down. And luckily there was one of the girls, one of the women's keepers, Sabi Hesh, was in there. She'd done her ACL as well, had done a knee plus meniscus, so more damage. She came in and she's probably one of the best people for me. Came in and like consoled me. Then Gleggy came in, one of the guys, been through a fair bit in his life from Northern Ireland, joining England, all this. So he came in. Probably one of the best people that could have seen me, kind of just came in, and I was like, just get everything out. Then Maddie, my now girlfriend, came in and she was like, you all right? I was like, I ain't functioning right now. So I was pretty broken, and then I basically gave myself a day. I was like, you know what, give yourself a day, don't worry about it. One of the other boys actually came in and started complaining about a bad back. I was like, pick your times. And then basically from that point in, so Matt, the physio, and Roy, S&C assistant, basically, who's now basically a full-time rehabber in terms of coaching. Basically, we just sat down and we just went, right, if we've got a tight timeline, let's just go after it. So I basically just, if I've got a sniff and I can't have any leeway, great, because that just gives me, I can just attack it, no problems. And we just went after it, which was pretty cool. Actually, because I don't think I've ever been as driven, and unfortunately haven't been as driven since, in terms of there was nothing stopping me at that stage. I was going to be fit, and if I wasn't good enough, then I wasn't good enough to go. But if I was physically capable, at least I've given myself a chance. So I kind of just went after it at that point, which was pretty awesome to be a part of, but also I can imagine it was actually pretty cool to see, because I was shifting more weight than I ever have been. I was stronger than I've ever been. I put on, I think, 3 kilograms over the course of it, just muscle, which for me is quite difficult. And it was actually for like a really enjoyable period. And then obviously COVID happened. So in January, I basically stopped and I lost a load of motivation because obviously games got postponed, everything happened, and I was knackered. I just didn't realise it because there's so much drive to go after everything, and I just flopped. And for a month, I just didn't function really as an athlete. And it was Maddie who pointed out to me, she was like, you've lost yourself here a bit. And I was like, yeah, I have. She was like, do you know how to get it back? I was like, not really right now. Which again is another tough conversation to have with someone who cares about you as well, to be like, look, you ain't yourself.
And understands the sport as well.
Yeah, exactly. So from that point of view, great, because it was actually the thing that dragged me out of it. Must have been quite hard for her to bring up, but at the same time, yeah, it was a pretty surreal 12 months, because do I think I had a good chance of making it? Yeah. But I was also looking at it quite naively in the fact that there was a lot that was out of my control. It was a pretty cool 12 months, to be honest. Weirdly, having had major setbacks, having had major injuries before, I've been there before where it's been 6-7 days of rehab a week. So I guess I wasn't, people were like, ACL, it's a big one. I was like, is it? Well, I didn't think it was that bad. But I was also really lucky that it was just strict ACL and no other damage, because I dislocated my knee. If I had meniscus and everything else, there was no sniff or chance of it. I just don't, for me, I don't see injuries as a setback in the long term. In the short term, yeah, they are. But in the long term, there's so much that you can gain, whether you learn about yourself, whether you learn how to get your body stronger, where you learn what works for you nutritionally. There's so many opportunities to really attack everything. So yeah, I guess I weirdly enjoyed the injury in the long run. And there were days where I didn't want to get up and get out of bed, don't get me wrong. But I still did it. And there were days where I lifted so much and I wanted to lift more, so I did it. There was a little bit of freedom to work, and that was kind of what was great about Matt
outside
and Roy.
of the routine.
Matt and Roy were great, and I was bouldering as well. I was doing stuff that otherwise people wouldn't have really thought about. There were mornings where we basically do a balance test where you stand on a BOSU, which is basically a flat pad, and half like a Swiss ball on the bottom. So it's basically just working on proprioception. So I stood with my bad knee on it, and I had a massive Swiss ball, and he'd stand about 15 yards away, and you just boot it at each other. There's a bit of proprioception. Let's do something that's just not by the book. Just do something different, and kind of, because you're doing it with somebody, you're engaging with somebody, it kind of just suddenly a bit of enthusiasm builds. So it wasn't the same thing every day, because that would have just driven me into it. And I'm a person that I like routine, but not strict routine, if that makes sense. So for me, there was freedom to be able to work around, which was great, and actually a lot of fun on the same time.
So I'm assuming it's not a sponge and the magic spray.
Nah, not for that one, unfortunately. Wouldn't have minded that, though. It'd been quicker, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have.